Night. Where in the world is Vicky Joy? Hey, if anybody's paying attention, she's been gone for a month. She's coming back soon. So everybody remember, we gave her a month off. She's working on hitting some deadlines. Guys, my name is Tom Dunn. This is Through the Black. ThroughTheBlack.com is the website, and that's where you can go to find all of our links, all of our junk, all of our stuff. And yes, we do have conferences coming up. Go there for at the end of July. That'll be here before you know it. Folks, we got a great show for you tonight. I'm excited to bring on my guest here in a few minutes. But I have to talk about Freedom Encounters first, okay? So we do Freedom Encounters on Wednesday. And, yeah, we've been doing them since the beginning of the year, almost, 6 full months. And we have talked to probably close to 50 people. Praise God for that. I'm so thankful for that. Wow, we had a couple today that were just that were great. We got to pray with some people. We got to encourage some people. And we even had somebody come on and join us that's getting training, that's in the background, that's praying. We need more people to be able to be trained and to be able to help other people. So that's a great thing. So guys, let me tell you what's going on. I'm not sure what's going on, but we've run into something recently, and I don't know why this is happening, but we're having a bunch of no-shows. Now, we have not had that issue until about the past 3 weeks, where people will schedule a Freedom Encounter and then they don't show up. And then we can't use that time. There's somebody else that might need the time, but they have to wait until a couple more weeks when their appointment is there. And folks, I'm not sure what's happening, but we got to fix this problem. I'm not sure what to do. And I'll be honest with you, I am very discouraged by this. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just like, man, I am wore out. And we are waiting hours and people are not showing up, and I'm sending them emails and trying to get confirmation. So we're going to figure this out. But this is what I want to say about that. I reject discouragement. I reject an attack from the enemy. Folks, when we have a Freedom Encounter, when we talk to somebody, I'm telling you that it's an amazing thing. Rob and I come out and we are on cloud 9, and we love praying with people and helping people. The enemy hates it. Okay. So we're just going to reject discouragement. We're going to reject attack from the enemy. And I'm going to pray about it right now. And guys, I want you to pray for us. We have a praying team here at Through the Black. And you guys are an amazing family. You support us in all kinds of ways, and we appreciate it so much. So I want to pray right now in Jesus' name for what's going on with the Freedom Encounters. And so, Lord, we just lift you up and we praise you and we thank you for all the great fruit that we've seen just in these last few months, from being able to pray with people, see people get set free, break strongholds. All glory to you. Your blood, your power, Lord, your deliverance power, your healing power, God. It's because of you. You are the answer for this hopeless world. And Father, I reject discouragement. I reject the enemy and any attack that's coming on this ministry that would try to get us to give up, to stop us from doing what we're doing. I pray you help us figure out what's going on and why we're running into this problem with so many no-shows. and that you would just have your way concerning the Freedom Encounter ministry and the Through the Black ministry. We turn it all over to you, and we love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Folks, if you think about us this week, say a prayer for us and pray for us about the Freedom Encounters. I actually do have tomorrow is one of those days where we opened up some appointments on Thursday. So I got a couple appointments tomorrow, and we're hoping everybody shows up. And we're just going to do the best that we can. And yes, thank you. Come in agreement. So, folks, hey, I just recently got to know this guest that we're going to have tonight, and he's just going to come on audio, and he's going to share his testimony. And if you've looked at the thumbnail, you know that one of those things that he's going to talk about is targeted harassment and gang stalking and things like that, or what some people know as TI, targeted individual. So he's going to come on. We're going to expose that tonight. And his name is Jeff. I want you to pray for Jeff tonight as he's talking. He needs prayers, and he needs encouragement and protection and all that stuff. I just really gotten to talk to him a couple times and get to know him. And I've seen him do interviews with other people, and I'm excited to have him on. So I'm going to just go ahead and ask, hey, Jeff, come on in here now. And there he is. Hey, man, how are you doing tonight?
Doing the best I can, Tom. Thank you so much, man. Thank you. How are you?
Hey, man. You know what? I am doing the best I can too, and I'm just glad to have you on tonight. And I know that this is not the easiest thing in the world, and so we're just asking the listeners. I'll tell you what, we have great listeners here, and these guys are prayer warriors, and they're going to be praying for you. And I know this is difficult. There's a lot of things to cover. So I want to turn it over to you.
Thanks.
And just I'm going to let you get rolling, and I'll ask you questions to kind of guide us along the way. But man,
Thanks.
Where do you want to start at, Jeff?
Just quickly at the beginning, probably my childhood, because that's when I think we were talking about that the first time we spoke. There was connections with my grandfather and actually the Manhattan Project, and then my birth, actually, which was, whenever I discuss these things, I always get so self-conscious because I know how strange these things are, but I say them nevertheless because it's important. Because
you're in good company tonight, Jeff, because that's what we talk about is the strange things.
Good. Okay, well, my birth was timed to occur during a solar eclipse. I found that out later in life, much later. I learned about it when I was 30, but I didn't realize the very serious occult significance when that happens. Actually, it's interesting. I think what I figured out, or what I believe, and it's hard to really zero in on certain these very esoteric things, is that when the stellar bodies cross during an eclipse, the shape of one eye appears in the sky. So what I've been able to research is that that's symbolic of, obviously, the eye of Lucifer, the eye of Satan. In other words, what it says is that, his eye will always be on you. It's like it's a positive thing. I mean, listen, I'm not in any way comparing myself to anybody who's, in the royal family. I'm not that at all. But I did find out that in those circles, in those bloodline circles, this is a common occurrence. And that I didn't know until, when I started finding these things out. And so looking back, and again, my childhood was just a great deal of it I never remembered, but I never questioned that I didn't remember them. I was an only child. I grew up with an extremely abusive situation. So my memories, I knew were different than the average person's. They were just, they weren't healthy. And they certainly weren't what I would watch on TV and wish they were, like Little House on the Prairie and all these shows. Mine was the opposite. So when I was born, and again, from what I remember, the first 3 years I lived with my mom and dad. And then when I was 3, my dad just left, and I wouldn't meet him until I was 17, and we barely spent 2 months together my entire life. But so those 3 years, 3 to 6, I lived with my grandparents, and I didn't see either of my parents or my mother for those 3 years, except for once that I remember, I think. But there were other odd memories during that time, but they're very shadowed. But when I was 6, this is when some of the memories begin. From age 6 to 11, my mother took me to live with her. And that's when it became extremely abusive in every sense, emotionally, physically, physically in that very inappropriate sense. And, I remember, and this came to me, I guess about 10 years ago out of the blue, one of the medications she would just give me relentlessly was called Donatol. So I went on the internet, looked up Donatol, and it's a mixture. Well, there are three things in it. One of them is scopolamine and phenobarbital. Scopolamine, they used to call it the devil's breath, and it just wipes your memory. So I remember, often waking up in my mother's bed. I remember other things that, don't need to go into. And that was a common occurrence. But also, sprinkled in with that were things like, she'd give me a puppy and I'd have it for maybe a week or two. And then, one day I'd come home or I'd be there and she goes, well, it got sick. We had to take it back. So there were all these constant traumas that were introduced into my life, and later on, I remember reading in a book about ritual abuse that the victim cannot be allowed to bond with his mother. That's one of the, and I don't know, if I'm not a doctor, I don't, that's just one thing that I had read and that resonated with me, certainly as being very true. And so there were all of these drugs, and every morning, when she wake me up, she took a lot of drugs herself, a lot of heavy duty medications because of what happened to her when she was young. These things tend to run in the family, from what I've read too, from what I've learned. These sort of very inappropriate relationships tend to continue down the line until some person, by the grace of God, says, okay, no more. This can't continue. And so when I was 11, without much of I'm keeping my eye on the time, without much of a warning at all, I was shipped off to this boarding school. I'm not going to name it. And what was interesting was about 3 years ago, I was just in this apartment in Lake Placid, and it just occurred to me to look up the name of the guy who owned the school, actually, with no oversight whatsoever. So I looked it up, and then I found out some very interesting things. That he had worked, with the Office of Naval Research, and at one time. Now I didn't find a lot there because that was before, I guess, I was savvy and before other internet tools, before I started utilizing them. So not long ago, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And again, these things kind of just come into your head to look him up really deeply, do a deep dive. And so I found out, so I was there in 77, I think it was. What I found out was he bought the school in 1955. Bought it. And from 47 or 1949 to 1954, he was doing psychological research for the Office of Naval Intelligence in the base in Long Island. Now that blew my mind because a couple of years ago, Well, in 2011, I put the dots together. It's like a quick reverse trip. In 2011, I was listening to can we say Russ's name?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Russ Dizdar, he's
Okay. So I was listening to an interview he did, and he described it was a long interview, like 3 hours with somebody. I won't say his name, and he described my life, the entire arc of my life, and I started rethinking so many things. Okay, so where did I leave off? Okay, so when I got to I was looking up this guy's past, it was just one thing after another. And then I'd look deeper and I would find out like so he left the Office of Naval Research in 54. It was in 1955 that the Office of Naval Research gave all of its research to the CIA to do the MK Ultra thing in earnest. So the year or within several hundred days that he left, all of the research that he had been involved with for years gets handed off to the CIA for its MK Ultra, or I'm not saying they started then, but whatever they did at the ONR was sent to the CIA. So that's where I was for 8 months, and then I ran away from there, and because I remember one morning if you have the old Zippo lighters and you open it up halfway and put the flame on, it could heat the top red hot after a while. So somebody woke me up by pushing that into my arm. So I took off, I went home, and my mother came to the door. And oddly enough, even though I have been through a lot of nightmarish things, this was probably the most painful moment in my life. She opened up the door and looked at me. She goes, "What are you doing here?" I mean, it was complete, like, just annoyance. Like, I was just really pain in the butt, inconvenience. The last thing she wanted to see was me, even though I was homesick all of the 8 months for her. And even though she was, in a lot of ways, very abusive mother. So she dragged me in the house. She goes to make a phone call. She comes back out. She says, either you go back to boarding school right now, I'm going to send you to a mental hospital. So I chose the hospital, which actually was the smart choice, because that was actually it was a brand new wing, the children's wing in a hospital. I was a third kid there, was 77. So all of these probably ex kind of hippie people who went on to get their degrees were all working there. And, I learned how to play chess, but it was actually a normal childhood. The best year of my childhood was in a hospital. But so just to come back to boarding school for a second, the boarding school that this man was running, who was in the Office of Naval Research. Now, if you look at the school, I don't know if I told you this, Tom, there's a statue there that's very much, very much connected and of the symbol for Saturn. I mean, if you look at it, and if you put like the symbol for Saturn, which if I'm correct is often, compared to Satan, Saturn, Sauron. So they have this big silver statue, and it's filled with ritualistic symbols with a completely Saturnic theme all over it. Which to me, whenever I've done really, really, really deep dives into, the world of intelligence and the occult and all those things, the one thing I keep running into is where, very, very dark occult practices and three-letter agencies meet up. There's a point where they connect. And that's where I keep ending up and doing deep research. So you have this statue, that symbol of Saturn and secret societies, and to a guy who bought the school. He had no oversight, none whatsoever. And actually now the new owners have no oversight either. It's run completely without any outside supervision, no boards of directors, nothing. And now when kids go there, it's their time, every hour of their day. It's completely structured. medications, this, that. It's very, very disturbing.
Jeff, I
yes,
want to back you up and just say, in private, you told me the name of this school, and I
yes.
researched it, and I found a lot of connections with the alumni, and just a lot of sad endings and a lot of sad things with connections to this school. So yeah, go on. I just wanted to back you up right there.
No, thank you. I appreciate that, because whenever I research things, I don't just look for confirmation to make me feel better or to make me feel more right. I keep a very high journalistic standard for myself. I almost want to say, a forensic level, in the sense that if I had to stand before authorities and testify to this and open up a file, I would be able to do it, and the details and the organization of how I would lay things out would be such that I can, explain it in a way where a court would listen, because that's, if that ever happens and if I ever get the chance to, that would be great. But yeah, this school is unbelievably involved with things. But so then I left, went to the hospital, left there, went to another boarding school. Not a lot of stuff interest there. Came home. Because of my family's connections, my grandfather's connections, I was able to cut school for tremendous amounts of time. I mean, just the majority of the year, I'd go to school here and there. My mother was, kind of drugged up in bed because of what she experienced when she was young. And so I would just sneak back home and none the wiser. But she'd get a call every now and then, but she didn't really care, to be honest. And my grandfather could resolve anything with a phone call. Real quick about my granddad. He, I think there was a guy named Squeaky Fromm who would try to, take out Gerald Ford, and if
Connected to the Manson family. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, my grandfather was private off the record counsel for Squeaky Fromm. I mean, like the main person, but off the record. Mm-hmm. So he was, I mean, I don't want to go into the names that he knew, because it would sound so silly, but they're no names.
Some of them, Jeff, but yeah.
And so it was just so he could make a call and anything would go away. So I had a bubble around me that was, that allowed me to, I'm just looking at some notes that I have. So I was allowed to do that. So there were a lot of my teen years that I don't remember. I remember having a back injury and then some very inappropriate things happening to me, involving my mother in my teen years, actually, which I think probably makes it more traumatic. But I had broken my back and fractured my pelvis, and I couldn't even move from the bed. I just was kind of trapped there in a way. But what I want to do is kind of go forward again. I don't want to get stuck in the past. I want to give some very disturbing, unsettling examples of some of the things that have happened to me. And one example that I wanted to talk about is, again, this is going forward. This is about 2011, which was a year that everything got weird in my life. I had, around this time, this is just before I learned about my past. This is when other things started happening. So I go to see a psychiatrist that I had been seeing for the most part since the late 90s. A very, very high-end dude, office, like off Madison Avenue. I'm not saying that, ooh, look at me in Madison Avenue. I'm just saying this is sort of that level where things tend to happen. And he was, went to the highest English colleges, all this kind of thing. And he was also the chief of a schizophrenia research department, which is interesting. And so I go in to see him. I go into his office. It's a late afternoon, early evening. So I knock on the door. It's in like a lot of offices in New York City. It's in a bottom of an apartment building. And you go in, and I knock on the door. I open the door, There was no lights. There were no other patients in the waiting room. There was no secretary behind the desk. All the lights were out. There was the light way in the back past the secretary's desk was his office light. And he came out, he shook my hand. We had known each other for a long time at this point. Well, it's 96 to this time, with about a 3 or 4 year break in there. So I sit on my side of the desk. Now, this is the disturbing thing. My mouth is getting dry. So he goes to sit on his side of the desk. And as he is sitting, what he does, as he lowers himself to the chair, he takes his glasses and lowers them to the bridge of his nose, the end of his nose, in a perfectly like synchronized manner at the same exact speed that his legs are lowering. He holds my eyes, Tom, in a way that the only way I can describe it is that I've always described it is he owned my eyes. He owned them, and I was just held by them. So he does these movements, and then he makes a very loud throat clearing sound. And then that's all I remember. And then I woke up in front of his office, walking to the subway in the rain. And that is not like me. We always used to have conversations. I remember many conversations I had with him. But going in there with the lights off, and it was a first floor office. So if you were looking in from the outside, if you were on the street, you would think his office was closed and nobody was there. But yeah, so that was an experience.
Jeff, you're doing great, by the way. And I mean, the things that you have shared with me and the things that you're sharing tonight, we've heard similar stories. And I know that there are going to be people that are listening that it's going to bring them confirmation. And they're going to be like, wow, I listened to the show this one time and there was this guy talking and I had these things happen to me as well. So anyway, I just want to encourage you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Just by sharing that and letting you know that, hey, even though this is difficult tonight, this is gonna bring confirmation for people and inspiration to people. So
thank you.
Please continue.
Okay. Another example. I'm trying to, I'm condensing a lot of things for time, but there was another experience which would have been, let me think, before this, a number of years, actually. I was in the hospital and this didn't click into me until a couple of years ago, or even a year ago, that this was odd. I was in the hospital about 2003. There was this woman who came to take me into what I think was supposed to be a dental appointment. She had a white, long sort of gown on. The entire room was white. Everything, the supposed dental chair, what looked like a CAT scan, but it was only half the length. But there was no dental equipment by the chair, just the chair. And I'm doing this really quickly. So I remember sitting in the chair, and then I remember her lowering this light, a very large circular light, like circular lights within it, into my face, about 4 inches from my face, and then bam, I was out. So these things, and it's funny how you remember them down the road. It's like in 2015, I gotten to know another survivor at that point. And, I was staying with her briefly in Colorado, and it just hit me that there was, when I was 13, which is actually, this is interesting. Funny that I forgot, at the second boarding school. So it was the first boarding school and then the hospital, then the second boarding school. One thing did happen that was strange. I had always remembered being in this chair, and it was like all these like sticky things were put all over my head and my forehead and my head. And this is going to be EEG. And I remember somebody saying like 20 minutes or 40 minutes ago, try not to blink, don't move, the whole thing. And now I had always remembered that, Tom, as being a school trip until 2000. That was 1980, and 2015 was at 35 years later. I'm like, hang on, what kind of school trip? You take the kids for an EEG. I mean, it took all those years for me just to question that. And I don't think I'm a dumb guy, but it never even occurred to me that was kind of odd. So there was something that happened at that school. See, even during this conversation, it kind of slipped into the back recesses of my mind. So things like this, and the harassment and the gang stalking and all of that happened within less than a year of me realizing listening, just the grace of God, listening to that interview. And it was a 3-part interview, and it was just amazing. And that was probably months into when the other harassment started. And of course, I'm sure there's an overlap. I have a sense of why. That would be a longer story, but obviously there's some kind of an overlap there that I don't fully understand. Because I'll give you another example of what I experienced when I said earlier, my dad left when I was 3. It didn't be until I was 17. Spent maybe 2.5 months with him my whole life until he passed away a couple of years ago. So one day I'm going to see some really good friends of mine, and they live in a gated sort of apartment area. And I went to the security guard there. I said, "Hi, my name's Jeff." I said my last name. And I said, "I'm here to see, my 2 friends." They sent their names. And she goes, "Is your father's name Joseph?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She goes, "Is his middle name such and such?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She goes, "How do you do? I was his first wife." And then she introduced herself. Now I just took that. Now I was a Christian when I was 15. Because my aunt told me that God loved me. And that's all it took. Like the lowest hanging fruit on the planet, that somebody would love me was like, "You're kidding me." And he's aware of me personally. All it took, very simple, couldn't have been easier. So I tended to interpret a lot of the synchronistic things in my life as being God, and I guess, why wouldn't I suppose, at that point. But, there are a great deal of elaborate orchestrations in my life. So my dad, this is where it becomes strange. The next day, I hadn't seen my dad or heard from him for quite a number of years. I get a phone call the day after, I meet her. Now that should told me something, but it didn't. So I drag him to see her. They have this kind of an awkward reunion. She calls her sister. We go to sister's house. All of these things. They happen to have like a brand new videotape of my father when he was younger with his first wife. This brand new thing. Like, how did that happen? And so they give it to me, and I'm touched, and my dad gets offered this incredible job, and to stay in New York, and all this buildup, like I'm going to have my dad back, and I was just so walking on air, right? I can't wait to go see him. I can ask him all these questions. I'll have a dad. So at the very last minute, he's in his car, and he tells me, basically he decided against it and he's going to leave. Now that, to me, in hindsight, after all I've learned, was just a re-traumatization. You re-traumatize somebody. You just bang, you smash them. And that, of course, was, to this day, I remember where I was sitting when my dad told me that. I remember it took all the strength I had not to let the tears fly. But that was a trauma. There's so many incidents in hindsight, that I put together that are just disturbing. People coming into my life, in a romantic sense, that does happen. People will come into your life. There'll be these usual orchestrations that seem natural, that seem like happenstance, and they're not. And you could be in a relationship for a few years, and then you find out, as I did down the line, that it wasn't, kosher, so to speak, at all. That it was very orchestrated and very disingenuous, and that I was played for several years. And in hindsight, after that was over and I started waking up, I pieced that together, and the things that I found out were mind-boggling, and heartbreaking in a lot of ways. But I remember there was a time, I had met, because your life there's a script for your life, I realized. They really have the people that you're going to encounter. They're steering you. Because all of these tests that I remember as a kid, even as a little, all of these experiences, these reassessments and tests, and seeing what abilities are coming forth and where your strengths and weaknesses are, they adapt and point you in directions where you meet people and make connections that seem natural, but they're not. But the point I'm trying to make is that in 1988, I met a woman while I was, I don't like, I've always been a horrible salesman. I always feel like I'm, trying to smile and be nice to get somebody's money. But for this very brief period, I was door-to-door salesman back in the 80s when the economy was such you could actually do that. So I knocked on this door. A woman answered. It was like kind of one of those love at first sight things. And it was not planned. It was not orchestrated, because we would just choose our streets randomly, depending upon our mood, myself and the guy who would close the deal. So I fell in love. We both fell in love, but it was off script. It was off the script of my life. So several weeks or 4 weeks into the relationship, when my grandfather could tell that I was just so out of my mind in love with this woman. So we're sitting there, and this is probably a couple of years before, I think, my dad, so maybe 3 years before the incident 3 or 4 years before, where he did the whole thing with the birthday and his first wife. So I was about just 21 at this point, I think. And so he's like at the dinner table, he goes, "Hey, would you like to go see your dad?" And I probably hadn't seen him at that point until I was 17. I might be getting my ears crossed, but so I said, "Of course, my God, yes, yes, yes." So he set it up so I'd go down there. And remember, he knew everything that was going on. And I did something that was not planned for me. So he sends me down to Florida for 2 weeks. So I get there. I don't remember getting off the plane. I have one memory of being in a Mustang that I rented, or my grandfather rented, a convertible. We were going to I-95 towards Miami. It was raining. The convertible was down, and I went to put it up in the rain, doing 90 miles an hour. And my dad grabbed my hand. And it's almost as if it kind of woke me up for a second. I just remember that. But now, my dad was supposedly told me he was homeless at the time. My grandfather would never have let me gone down there if he was homeless. If my grandfather saw, part of the heel on a shoe slightly worn away, I'd get more shoes. So my grandfather would have done a check. So basically, it was a motel on the beach. My dad said, "Hey, we got there the first night." And he goes, "Do you mind going outside while I meditate?" And I remember my feelings being hurt, but I went outside, and then I remember I sat in the ocean, and I kind of started to meditate, pretend they didn't even know what it was. But I wanted to do like a lot of kids, even though I was 21 or just 21, you want to do what your dad does. So I was kind of meditating. And then I remember looking to my right, and I remember somebody walking toward me. And that's it. That's all I remember. That, and one thing he said, he goes, "I put half and half in my coffee at one time, 1 cup of coffee." And he goes, "I like whole milk. Half and half is a little oily." And so that's what I remember from Florida, except when I got off the plane. I think it was when I got off the plane back in New York, there was this little guy, sort of like this little dude, came up to me, very smart, kind of in his 30s. And he said, "Listen, I saw," when I was a younger guy, I was, tall, tan, lifted weights all the time, because I saw, you're talking to some women, they seem to like you. I'm opening up an escort service. And it's mostly, basically he was saying, if you could come and, basically he was saying, I would, how do I say it? Experience the women for me and tell me like a pass or fail. So he was asking a 21-year-old dude if I wanted to come and do this, make money just trying the women that worked for him, doing that sort of thing. And I said no, because I was in love. And I remember standing there. I wish I got the guy's business card to this day. I wish I had it. And thinking, I can't hurt her. I cannot hurt her. And so I said no. And so, but if I didn't have a girlfriend, I don't know what I would have said, Tom. You know, a 21-year-old guy, you know, who's in the gym all day. You say, okay, here's this. I could easily have dropped the ball and backslid and gotten to that whole world. You know, so but that whole world is part of the world I'm talking about. But what I'm saying is that was an attempt to get me back on script. They had to. That relationship was something that was not supposed to happen. It was not planned. It was not part of my, you know, the whatever the map of my life that was chosen for me.
They had plans for you,
Yeah,
and you deviated from those plans, and the handlers were trying to, pull you back on track. So, so anyway, just for a moment here, anybody that's tuning in, yes, this is Through the Black, and you might notice that half of my screen is dark tonight. That's not by accident. It's because our guest, his name is Jeff, and he wants to remain just undercover and be covert about this show tonight and about this testimony. So if you're listening to this and you're hearing this testimony, the listeners of this show know that God is the God of compassion and the Father of all comfort. And Jeff, I've already said these things to you, and we prayed and we talked before,
yes,
you know, and we had a good time of prayer and stuff. But I just want to express that to anybody that might be listening, because this story is heartbreaking, and I'm seeing that in the comments tonight. Heartbreaking, heartbreaking, heartbreaking. This
wow.
is what people are saying. It is heartbreaking, and we live in a wicked world. We live in a fallen world, but Jesus Christ is the one that makes this world make sense. So if anybody out there is listening, I just want to share that, but I want you to continue on, Jeff. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, and the interesting thing is that even to this very day, it's like just actually about 3 or 4 days ago. You know, it's funny. And people are very critical of AI. I found it's been helpful for me to research and put pieces of the past together, because it can find all of these very, you know, hard to find details. So as I was, you know, asking it a question, what came to my mind is the only class when I was at that school with a Saturnic Satanese symbol that they have there now. I was the youngest kid in the school. I was 11, and then it went to a 13-year-old, and then to a 21, strangely. And I had an English class where this wonderful teacher, as I remember him being wonderful, he got me, like, I was a stutterer. I was not really communicative at all. But he saw something and he started me writing. And by the end of the 8 months before I left, I was writing about this young kid who lived on Jupiter with all of these robots that protected him. All right. So, but I was the only kid in that class. Now that by itself is kind of weird, you know. But and that just hit me. It's not a big thing, of course, but even like 35 years later, realizing that, you know, there's no school EEG school trip that I've ever heard. So you remember these things, but you accept them as being normal. And, you know, and I'm like a research maniac. I love it. I've loved it my whole life, even before my life got weird. But still, these large things will just appear. They'll pop in out of nowhere, and a dot will connect. Even to this day, I was quickly looking over some notes that I wanted to mention. Wow, covered a lot of them. But yeah, it's been a very challenging life. And then the harassment that kicked in started off in 2011. And it's been very, you know, a lot of the stuff that you hear, I like to call it also an illegal federal investigation of sorts, because that's what it is experienced like. You know, I call it a resource deprivation program, where your fiscal, your practical money, whatever, is cut off or limited to whatever degree they can. Your friends and relatives that's cut off. So there's financial, there's emotional deprivation, and the worst is the spiritual deprivation. And by that, I mean, if they can make you angry at God. And I'm not going to lie, Tom, I've gone back and forth. You know, self-pity and anger at God are two things, and I struggle with. I'm sure I'd be lying if I didn't say on a daily basis. You know, but one thing I do want to say, this might be important for anybody who's listening, is self-sabotage and self-destruction. That has been such an irrational and huge presence in my life. I don't know why. I will do the most ridiculous things if I establish a bridge. And I haven't really had a bridge with anybody, and it's been 5 years. It's been a nightmare. I have lived in so many places. I have been, you know, I'm only alive. There was disability. I got disability, but I'm sure they're trying to take that away. They've already reduced it, reduced a chunk of it. So, you know, but it's, where was that going? Okay, so
you were talking about self-sabotage.
Yeah, self-sabotage. Thank you. So, but my self-sabotage, it's so over the top. It's not like, you know, what an average person you would hear might struggle with. It's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. It doesn't make any, it's so stupid, you know, and so over the top. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, you know, I tend to think that I'm not alone in that. And I've done a lot of reading about this sort of thing, about, you know, ritual abuse and all the stuff that they could put in your head. And whatever that doctor put in my head in that, you know, Madison Avenue doctor's office, whatever he did, whatever he put in my head, or like somebody said, took out of my head, I don't know. I don't know. But I know I wasn't super self-destructive. Maybe I was, but not like down the road. Not like down the road. It's so funny. Like, it's kind of hitting me right now, actually, is it was around that time that I started just stupid. I mean, so ridiculously self-destructive. It's like if there was a bridge, I wouldn't burn it. Or like the bridge over the River Kwai, I'd go on, I'd put like explosions, not literally, of course. And I would just make sure that this person would never talk to me again. And I would it was just so bad. It was almost an insanity. And looking back and thinking that my concern is that, and also over the years, and I always am awkward talking about this, but I think it's important, is addiction. You know, you have this because of the trauma that you grew up with, and much of which you don't even remember. You know, you have this inability to sort of calm yourself. You're always in emotional pain. You're always in some kind of incredible dis-ease and fear and fear and fear and fear and sadness. So I off and on over the years, you know, the bottle. I'm not gonna. I can't not say that because I know that I'm not the only one. I've read enough and I've listened enough to know that addiction is something that a survivor will grab onto. Because it's like, you know, if there's a burn victim and he's in pain, you're going to give him whatever you have around you, and he's going to take whatever it is. If the only thing that a burn victim has in the room with him is heroin, well, yes, please pass the heroin. I'm not encouraging that, obviously. I'm not, but I understand it. I understand what it's like to, okay, I can't, you know, the sadness that I get sometimes. I do take medication for it, you know, and I'm putting this out there just because I think others probably do who've had my kind of background, and I want them to know that they're not alone. That's all. And so, but the sadness would become so intense, it was physical pain. It would go into that level. And the fear was just, so that combination, you just grab whatever makes me forget that I'm alone, or not feel so alone, not feel so sad, not feel so scared. So off and on over the years, I mean, So my heart just goes out to any other people who've had these kind of backgrounds and are alone and trying to navigate that. And then, whatever. And then they go through something that's so severe they can't take it anymore. They crack a bottle and hopefully they don't do something stupid. But a lot of times, I think when this is your background, when this abuse is your background, and when who knows what these doctors or whatever are putting in your head or taking out of your head, like somebody said, you don't know. And so you're kind of it's a combination of an ant farm and a petri dish. So you're experimented upon, you're always kind of watched, they kind of steer you in your life. And unfortunately, I've read about the point where they say, when like I'm in my late 50s, I'm not, no one's coming to me offering me that kind of job anymore. So not that I would take it, of course, but just to make a point. So I'm older now and I'm awake now. I'm not saying I'm not vulnerable to obviously being put under or being, that very sort of rapid induction hypnosis stuff, but I'm not really of use anymore. And that's why I think lately, whenever I've been reaching out to people for help, I'll have a couple of great conversations and then it's like, forget about it. They have nothing to do with me. They don't return my phone calls or my texts. And that's happening a lot lately. And there's a point that somebody, I want to say his name, wrote about called throwing you off the train. I think it's called. You throw somebody from the train, which is after the person is used up or, has like an expiration date is past it. And like I said, I'm getting up there, so I'm past it, so things have been getting really bad for me. And people who seem interested in helping, who've even said to be my emergency contacts. And these are people who are known and people who are, they're pulling back. So everybody is pulling back from me now. So my sense is that all these possible avenues of assistance and support are being systematically removed from me. And from what I've learned and studied and researched is that's kind of, you're being lined up to be, taken care of.
Jeff, I just want to mention to you that when you get the opportunity to come back and check out the comments in this video when it gets posted up on YouTube, and what you usually see is a lot of encouraging words, a lot of prayers, a lot of people saying that they're praying for you, and we've already seen that in the chat tonight that people are encouraging you in that way, and I mean, just so much stuff that you've covered in this 53 minutes, and I feel like we're only scratching the surface. I think that the things that you're saying tonight are too crazy not to be true. You know what I'm saying?
I think so. I think I do know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like you can't make this stuff up, right? And I mean, how do you know, Jeff, about the other people that I talk to and that I pray with that have the same, a very similar story that you do? Okay. Even though you guys are isolated, you're not alone. There are other people that have been through this. And I mean, this is harassment. This is you have been targeted, and people have tried to handle you, and all of this just insanity. It's heartbreaking, but it's a reality in the world that we live in, and it's done by people who are just have no soul, have no heart, and we shouldn't be surprised that people are capable of this kind of torture. Is really what it is, and what you've been through. We shouldn't be surprised that people are capable of doing that. But hey, we just got a little over 5 minutes left, and we talked about a lot of things. I just want to encourage you, and for anybody that's listening, yes, Jeff and I have prayed, and I have been praying for him, and this is I think this is even part of dare I say dare I call it therapy, but for Jeff, just to be able to come on here and share and expose the things that he's been through, right? He's been dealing with this, he's been carrying this, and this is one of his ways of fighting back, is exposing this. And folks, if you're listening in the archives and even in the chat, you can just let Jeff know that you're praying for him. How can people pray for you, Jeff?
It's always funny. I'm always touched. Like if I run into, years ago when I had more of a life, somebody said, "Oh, I was thinking about you the other week" or something, and I'm always just incredibly touched that somebody actually thought of me when I wasn't like there, or they didn't just see me recently. So if everybody can just think of me from time to time, and when you do, say a quick prayer, and just because I don't want, like I only have 5 minutes left. I have the one thing I've not, in all the traveling and the running around and trying to find safety, always trying to find safety, that I've done is I always have a big Ziploc bag of all the photos that I have from my life, because they're the last thing that proves that I was here. So in the back of my mind, there's like this fear that they want to make it as if I was never alive. Like they just want to wipe me off from the history of mankind, as if Jeff was never here, and eventually if people stop thinking of me and talking about me or anything, I mean, it's narcissistically, I just don't want to disappear. And most importantly, more than anything else, I would like to take this craziness of a life that I've had and somehow be able to be of service to help people who've been through similar things. I mean, I don't know how that can happen. I don't know. That would have to be a total God thing. But I would like to take everything I've been through and redeem it somehow by making it serve a purpose. But by taking just the ugliness, the awfulness of it, and turning it into something that can help somebody. I know what it's like to be alone in the corner, and cry and want to drink or whatever, or die, and I've been there a lot of times. And, so just to be able to, that God would just think of me every now and then, if you can, and just pray that God would, keep me safe, especially safe. And then I would be able to use this life of mine.
Jeff, the safest place that you can be is in the center of God's will. Okay. Don't forget about David. Okay. The military men were hiding in the rocks, and David went right up to the front line, right underneath the giant. What everybody else thought was dangerous was the safest place for David to be. Okay. So I just want to encourage you, and you may not recognize that, and you may not feel that, and you might think, Tom, you're crazy. Well, that's okay. I just want to encourage you that we have a biblical precedent where the safest place to be can be in the lion's den. The safest place to be can be in the furnace. Okay. And I'm telling you, if the devil decides to drop a missile on my head, a nuclear missile, it only does something if God allows it to do something. So, and I want to boldly encourage you, and you may not feel that, but maybe a few months down the road, it might click with you, brother. So I'm blown away that we got to hang out with you tonight and hear your story. It's harrowing, and I thank you for your courage to come on here and share this story. We've just got less than 30 seconds left. Any final words? Jeff, I want to have you back on sometime.
Please, I would love that.
Yeah, we gotta finish this up, and we gotta talk more about this. Okay, man.
Okay.
Any final words?
You just trust God. If God can, if I'm still alive, that's proof to me anyway that God is real. Yeah, and even that He still loves me, even though I can't quite connect with His love, but that's okay, because it's there must be something there. I just hope that He's kept me around so that I can help people. That's it, really.
Jeff, you've been fighting, and you're doing a good job, and you've come a long way. And we all got a long way to go, brother. So just don't give up. Fight the good fight. The Through the Black crew is praying for you. The Through the Black
you.
audience is praying for you.
Thank you.
And you're going to be all right, brother. So, hey, God bless everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. And we will see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.